Blog Talk Radio.
The show where a couple of middle-aged, angry men argue the merits of various films, lambast studios for being filled with incompetent jackasses, and continually lose their faith in humanity as it pertains to the state of critical analysis in the world. I'm Robert. I'm your host for the evening. Tonight we will be... I said this last week when Mark and I kind of went over our schedule for 2018, and I realized just the depths of personal depression, depravity, and general insanity I'm about to sink into come 2018, because there is like nothing I'm legitimately looking forward to. Anyway, I said last week that I believe Coco was the last movie for the next 12 months or so that I was legitimately looking forward to. Now, there's a handful of movies coming up in 18 that might not suck. I am not, universally down on everything on the calendar, be that our review calendar or just in general. But I am distinctly unenthused. Let me put it like that. But I know we had Coco, and look, the worst... Okay, let me phrase it like this. If we exclude Cars 2... because that is just the worst Pixar movie ever. The second worst Pixar movie ever is probably somewhere of a three-way tie, and it's debatable what order these fall in, between Cars 3, Brave, and The Good Dinosaur. And I'd still take every single one of those over 75 to 80% of the movies coming out next year. So Pixar's, again, they're not a perfect studio, but they don't screw up all that often. And they have an exceptional track record. So I was really looking forward to reviewing Coco. Now, thankfully that particular impulse was borne out. And yeah, I'm killing a bit of time here because Mark is in a hurry to get here. So Mark will be joining us in a little bit, but tonight we're reviewing the animated Pixar film Coco. Came out on Friday, more or less, and I believe it, smoked the box office because it's a good movie, and there was really nothing of terrible merit to combat it. Again, normally this is where I would ask Mark what he expected, but I don't really have Mark at the moment, so I suppose I'll go ahead and give you guys kind of what I thought about. Again, Pixar has such a phenomenal track record that even the lesser entries into their filmography are still very, very good to exceptional films. And I was just looking forward to it because it's a Pixar movie. Like, what's not to look forward to? Even when they're not great, they're usually at least good to watchable. Cars 2 being the massive and glaring exception. Yeah, I didn't want to bring this up a minute before we get going on this because Pixar released 2 films this year. There was Cars 3 earlier in the year, and then Coco. There's very clearly, when it comes to Pixar films, 2 types of them. There's the kind that were conceptualized, executed, released, and all with the singular vision. They are basically the same from start to finish. Now, there's always some changes along the way, but it is functionally the vision of the writer and director that is realized. Then there's those that are knocked around a bit during that process, that are completely revamped, that are reworked. Both Brave and The Good Dinosaur very specifically started out in conception as something different, and they just got reworked and retooled more than once along the way. And the fact the resulting product was as good as it was is a testament to the ability of all parties concerned. And then you have the very obvious commercial cash grabs like Cars 3, Cars 2. There's just like almost no legitimate creativity that went into it. It's just, sure, we think this will be successful. And Coco is definitely, it didn't get kicked around. There's a very cohesive vision here from start to finish. So, and frequently, Pixar doesn't usually release 2 movies in the span of the same year. The last time they did this was with Inside Out and The Good Dinosaur. And again, very clearly, there's one of those that was awesome and one of those that was battle-scarred when it was finally released. So anyway, that's how it bears noting that there's those 2 kinds of films with Pixar, and even the lesser entries into their portfolio are still better than so much of the average film. It's not even funny. All right. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the plot synopsis here. This is... I'm struggling to properly not contextualize, but to verbalize how the plot goes, because there's a few twists that are only pseudo-twists. Anyway, we start with the main character, a boy by the name of Miguel, giving some backstory and some history on his family. His great-great-grandfather walked out on them to pursue a life of music after his wife had given birth to their daughter. So his great-great-grandmother was very upset by this and banished music from the house, from their lives. It's deeply impractical, but kind of roll with it here. And the family became shoemakers. Miguel laments this, that they could have done so many other things, but now they chose shoes. And as the family grows, they just all they keep going into the family business. And the current kind of head of the household is... I need to rewind a minute. The daughter from the original bit there is Coco as the eponymous character, who's a very old woman with like onset dementia as her life ending as we get into this movie. And her daughter is kind of the head of the house at the moment, and she continues the tradition of no music, and this runs kind of contrary to how Miguel wants to live because he wants to be a musician. So, friction. As Miguel kind of tries to deal with this and is shut down by his family, he discovers that. Oh, sorry. The big thing about, again, the great-great-grandfather who left, it plays into the Day of the Dead mythology that they play with here, and that if you are, they want, his whole family wanted to forget that this particular individual was part of them, that he existed, and if you are forgotten, you actually wind up dying in the afterlife again, which is an interesting concept to play around with. So they don't have a picture of him that they put out for the Day of the Dead, where your ancestors from the other side are able to find you kind of based on that. And again, that becomes important later. Miguel thinks that his hero, whose name I can't remember, Ernesto de la Cruz, who is universally regarded as the most famous musician in the history of Mexico, while examining the photograph of, again, his deceased great-great-grandmother and the one that's missing the head of her husband, he sees that this particular headless individual has the same guitar that De La Cruz was famous for. He thinks De La Cruz is his great-great-grandfather, and after a somewhat emotional confrontation with his family, where they just don't want him to play music, and he just wants to dance, he doesn't want to box, type of thing. He sneaks into the tomb of Ernesto de la Cruz and tries to steal his guitar for the purposes of playing in the local music festival. However, as he steals the guitar, he is cursed because it wasn't his to take. He winds up he is cursed to enter the land of the dead. So as he leaves the tomb, he encounters the deceased spirits of other people, including his own family, and they have to try and figure out what happened. So they take him to the land of the dead to get advice about how to fix this, because the living shouldn't really exist in the land of the dead. Bad things happen. And they discover that it's actually rather easy to send him back because he is cursed. He just needs a blessing from a family member. And his great-great-grandmother, his name escapes me, is perfectly willing to give him her blessing to return to the land of the living, contingent upon him never playing music again. He's not happy with this. He decides that he's going to find his deceased great-great-grandfather and get his blessing, because then there won't be said contingency about playing music. While he is escaping from what is essentially police custody, he runs afoul of not quite a bum, but a lower on the totem pole individual because of how the society in the land of the dead works. Your status is determined by how many people remember you and how well you are thought of. By the name of Hector. And Hector knows De La Cruz and is willing to help Miguel get to him to obtain said blessing, provided Miguel will take his photo back to the living world so that he can be remembered, because he's about to fade away and die. Hijinks ensue as they try to get there. There's some bonding that takes place between those two, subsequent breaking of said bonding. But if I have Mark's not here to yell at me about editorializing. If I have one negative thing to say about this movie, and this is a very minor nitpick, if you know enough about both children's stories and how Pixar tells stories, this thing is very, in terms of its plot layout, it's pretty by the numbers. And when you're dealing with movies designed to appeal to kids, that's not a bad thing. But if I have a gripe, it's that. Hector gets deeply annoyed at Miguel because Miguel lied to him about needing to talk to De La Cruz to send him back, saying he had no other family on the other side. And Miguel just wants to be remembered. He just really doesn't want to fade away into the final death. Because when there's no one left on the land of the living who remembers you, you die again. You fade away, or some such. It's bad. That's really the crux of it. I'm not competent enough to discuss the specifics of the mythology behind it. And so Hector, they wind up, separating. Miguel actually does get all the way to Ernesto de la Cruz. Hector shows up. There's a confrontation there, wherein it comes to light that Hector mentioned that he and de la Cruz used to play together. They were musicians. Turns out de la Cruz was just kind of the front man, while Hector was the one who wrote music well and played better. But de la Cruz was the photogenic one, and so he wound up as the front man, and then, well, it turns out he actually murdered Hector when Hector was trying to leave so that he could steal all the remainder of his songs and continue to cement his status as a, cultural icon. As that comes to light, they reveal that it's not de la Cruz who is Miguel's great-great-grandfather, whatever it happened to be. It's actually Hector. But before they can actually send Miguel back, de la Cruz stole the picture of Hector that he had wanted to be, taken back to the land of the living so he could be remembered. There's a bit of, there's some conflict. There's a musical number. There's them trying to get back said picture. It doesn't quite work. They send Miguel back as Hector is starting to fade away. Miguel, who has now realized that his senile and very elderly great-grandmother, Coco, is forgetting her father, and that's what's causing him to fade away. So after he returns to the land of the living, he beelines it to her to try to get through to her to help her remember. Initially, this doesn't actually work all that well. But the power of music, because again, he wants to be a musician, helps re-spark some of her memories. It turns out, again, they actually lost the photo that Hector wanted them to bring back, so he's like resigned as Miguel leaves that he's just going to fade away and die again. It turns out Coco actually kept the torn-off portion of the other photograph. She also has documentation proving that he was the one who wrote all the songs and was essentially responsible for de la Cruz's success. She has some final moments of lucidity, and Miguel's family realizes that music isn't really all that bad because, there's bad music, but music as a fundamental, source of interaction and artistic expression is not bad. We end with a flash forward to 1 year in the future when Coco is passed on. She is reunited with, the rest of the family on the other side for another Day of the Dead, and everyone is, remembered and happy, and there's a final musical number that sends everyone home feeling good about themselves. That's kind of how that goes, and I'm sure that I'm forgetting something that Mark would want to bring up, but God, where do I want to start with this? There's really nothing wrong with this movie. I just gotta start there. Again, if you've seen enough movies, especially within the genre, it's not terribly hard to see where things are going. There's a few bits of execution that are different. Again, I figured de la Cruz wasn't going to be Miguel's ancestor, because I forget how many greats I'm potentially supposed to attach to that. The fact that he actually turned out to be, a murderer was... the effect is basically the same, but how they get there is, slightly different. I really can't... Again, I can't find any fault with essentially anything else. The music for this movie is excellent. Visually, it's beautiful. It is gorgeous to look at. And while it does follow a lot of very traditional, well set down plot points to kind of tick off as the story winds on, it's extremely well written. It doesn't again, if you think about things the way that I do, you can kind of tick off, the boxes, but it's not it's executed incredibly well, which is one of the big things about, if you're not gonna try and break new ground, I've frequently believed that things being new and different just for the sake of being new and different is not virtuous, any more than following established conventions is virtuous in and of itself. It's how you do it. It's done very, very well here. There's a lot of really interesting, again, writing choices. The fact that you wind up, again, I kind of joked, I made, a Billy Elliot joke. But it doesn't feel like it's a Billy Elliot retread. It's, these individuals in this family who have a pretty legitimate, at the time they had a legitimate reason for their emotional response and for the actions that they took. And now it's kind of passed on, and it seems a little dogmatized, which it's supposed to, that there's not a lot of reason behind it at this point, but it started from an emotionally relatable position. And now you wind up with the kid who just wants to play music and is pretty darn good at it. Some of the bits in the Land of the Dead that kind of play off of that are really well done. There's one in particular, as Miguel was trying to get to the De La Cruz estate, where his deceased great-great-grandmother is trying to catch him, because if he stays there past sunrise, he dies and is stuck in the Land of the Dead forever. So there's a clock on that whole adventure. They share this moment where he chastises her for giving up music, and that something along the lines of, you never really had to you banished it, but it never meant anything to you. And it turns out she's quite a gifted singer, and she talks about how it did, the moment, what led to her husband leaving was that after they used to be musicians together, and there was a deep love of it, but after they had a kid, kids change things by the nature of their existence. She didn't want to continue, wandering and playing music. She wanted to settle in a specific area, have roots and a stable environment for their child to grow up in. And he wasn't quite done chasing music. And again, it turns out later that, so again, her bitterness is understandable after, as he left. Again, the big thing the big reveal at the end was everyone, the entire family thinks he just left and never came back, and they don't speak of him. They want to forget him, et cetera, et cetera. They don't even know his name. It's literally just Coco. The rest of the family does not even have a name for this person. And it turns out that he was actually trying to return to them when he was murdered by Ernesto de la Cruz. Because, I should have seen that coming even more, because he's voiced by Benjamin Bratt. And Benjamin Bratt's a little bit like Ed Harris. If he's in your movie and there's a villainous role, it's probably him. If you really want to throw off people who metagame movies like that, you need a movie with both Ed Harris and Benjamin Bratt that's a whodunit. Because it's one of them, but you'll never know who until it comes out at the very end. Anyway, so again, there's a lot of damaged feelings, and Miguel, I really like his character arc here, because he starts out with a legitimate desire and a passion for music that is just banned by the family, and much as the family's kind of in the wrong, the kid doesn't have the vocabulary and the maturity to actually try and express or communicate this, and they don't have the ability to relate with said child.
Hey, I'm back.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I'm assuming you're doing a plot synopsis?
Already did it.
Oh, shit. God, I'm sorry. That was an unavoidable work call.
It happens. At least to those who are gainfully employed.
Indeed. All right, man. Go ahead and finish what you're doing. I apologize for interrupting you.
No, go ahead. It's my only point that I was just talking about how much I like kind of the writing and the character arc that they gave Miguel, because he just wants to do something that his family is, well, you can understand elements of why the family feels the way they do about music and musicians and such. It's a little bit of an outdated perspective. And he is more than prepared to simply go the... How do I say this? There's a kind of a long tradition in film, especially children's film, of families opposing the, somewhat unconventional desires of children, and children subsequently leaving behind said family to pursue their dream, and this is applauded. Too much so, in my opinion, but so he starts out in that spot emotionally and as a character, and what he learns by the end is that kind of regardless of those dreams, that his family is actually the most important thing, and there's fault all around for some of the inciting events, but he learns a more traditional lesson as far as that goes, rather than a lot of contemporary, fiction on the subject that's designed to, teach morals. And it was an interesting, arc choice that they had for him, and I thought that they executed it exceptionally well. So, anyway, Mark, hi, how you doing?
Been better. But about this movie, I thought it was fantastic. I thought I haven't ugly cried this hard since Inside Out, which I think was last year, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed this. This movie spoke to me in a lot of ways, just because I'm such a huge fan of music, and music plays this tremendous role in my life. I mean, I wish I could play music. I've just never really had a talent for it. But, I'm always singing a song, and I've always got music on my mind. And I had a friend of mine who I love that fact that he said this, and I've repeated it ad nauseum ever since he said it to me. He's like, I can't imagine a day that goes by that I don't make a new musical discovery, a new song or a band or something. So that element of this movie really jumped out and spoke to me, because here's this family struggling with kind of, the opposite of that, really. This idea that music ruined their family and wrecked their lives and all this stuff. So that all, like I said, that all spoke to me. Obviously, Pixar does a really, really good job of pulling on the heartstrings in a lot of different ways, and certainly this movie did that. In terms of a boy searching for his father, and how his actual father got betrayed by this guy that he'd looked up to his entire life, and all of that. All of it just worked very, very well. And I have to say, my daughter had the best reaction when Ernesto de Cruz throws Miguel into the pit. She audibly gasped and just bursted into tears. Was just horrified by what had happened. And and she doesn't quite make the connections that you and I do in terms of, this is all going to work out. It's an animated feature for children. This is going to be okay. Give it a minute. And nope, she thought he was dead. It was like, oh God, he's a god. She's still in that innocent movie goer phase of, she still thinks the good guy can die. So she was horrified.
God, I miss thinking that. I genuinely miss the ability to suspend my disbelief like that. I am so jaded.
I was going to say, it's a fun thing to watch, as not just her dad, but as a fellow moviegoer, to see somebody, who can be totally enraptured in what's going on and can legit believe that the hero's in mortal peril. Because the whole time because as soon as they introduced the Ernesto Del Cruz character, I was like, all right, what's the twist going to be? It's like, he's not really his father, or he does, he never loved him, or something.
I knew that he wasn't really his ancestor, and I figured that he had kind of screwed with, Hector, who I figured was his ancestor, because otherwise he's just in a really weird spot to be, positioned narratively.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't see the murder coming. Again, I was prepared to accept that he had, stolen his guitar and some of his material, or Hector had approached him, for advice. There's a lot of ways that could have played. And when you watch you consume as much material as you and I do, there's things about it you can know that they're going like, okay, here's 4 different ways they could go. It's pretty much limited to these 4, but which one are they going to choose, and how well are they going to do it?
Right.
And yeah, the murder. Of course, I think what really kills me about that, and I mean this in a good way, is that the way they figure out that no, wait, you murdered him, is that he actually replicated the scene where he killed that guy and then put it in a movie.
Right.
Because that is such a sociopathic thing to do.
Sure, you draw on what you know. I don't look. I have again apologized for this in the first 20 minutes of this, but I honestly don't have a tremendous amount to say in regards to critical elements. The movie looks amazing, but why wouldn't it? I mean, as bad as The Good Dinosaur was, that looked amazing. Pixar and Disney are really the superior brand in visual animation, in terms of the look of these things. Illumination, creates really fun comedies, and obviously they make a lot of money, with the Despicable Me franchise and now The Secret Life of Pets, a lesser degree, Sing and whatnot. But nobody approaches Pixar and Disney. I mean, last year Moana looked incredible. Inside Out looked incredible. The Good Dinosaur looked fantastic. Look, for what it's worth, Cars wasn't a bad-looking movie either. It may not have been.
It was bad
on
everywhere else,
favorite
but it looked good.
Yeah. Even, Cars being a great example of, even if the movie is terrible, it looks fantastic. And, they did a great job of taking the concept of the Day of the Dead festival and bringing it to life with such vibrancy. There's going to be a critic who's not particularly wazooey about the use of Mexican culture in this movie, and I don't know what would have made this person happy, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But this critic over here, thought they did a great job of taking Mexican culture and celebrating it and making it an integral part of the story. I don't feel like anyone was stereotyped. I don't feel like the Mexican culture was mistreated or exploited in any way. I felt like in any culture, Moana being a really good example of this with the Polynesian culture. I thought they took great pains to show you this is the culture. These are the different elements of it. This is what it looks like. And this is the backdrop for the story that we're telling. That's really it. The voice cast was fantastic. Nobody. I don't know if anyone necessarily stood out. Like if there was a particular a particular voice artist here who stood out more than anybody else. But I will tell you that I really, really love the music in this. If I were into buying soundtracks, I might have bought the soundtrack to this one. And I'm a huge fan of, the mariachi type music. The limited that I've heard, I've thoroughly enjoyed. I used to own the Desperado soundtrack, just as an example. And so what I heard here, I thought was really, really great, and the way it was portrayed on screen was very enrapturing for me.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out that are small details that are the kinds of things that I pick up on that in a lot of ways if I'm on the fence about a movie, it's not the overarching plot in its sense that it makes or breaks my enjoyment. It's actually the little things. Case in point, not from this movie, but from a series we'll be reviewing. I think next week technically. Punisher's the 5th, right?
Yep, Punisher is a week from tonight.
I thought we were doing Star Wars a week from tonight.
Star Wars is the week this week.
No, Star Wars is the week after, yeah. Which shows you how much I care. Like, I don't. I just don't.
Look, you're fucking this all up, buddy. Okay, next week is Punisher. The week after that is The Crown, then Star Wars.
Okay.
Three weeks away.
The point, like, I don't care. Like, I know other people are just in a tizzy because Star Wars. Like, I don't care. I just don't. It's a box I have to check off. Anyway, the point I was going to get to there is there's a character in the Punisher series who is supposed to be an agent for the Department of Homeland Security. And the badge she wears very prominently says ICE, ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Bugs me to death that she's wearing the wrong badge. I guarantee you nobody else cares. I still very much enjoyed that show, and I will enjoy talking about it. But as an example of minor things that I find enjoyment or are like ice picks in my brain, that's an example. There were a couple of moments in this one that I got a serious laugh out of. During their music festival and the Land of the Dead, they have a dead analog of Skrillex, and he's terrible, which is fine because I hate dubstep so much. So them mocking Skrillex was perfectly all right with me. And I also got a laugh out of out of Frida. And how the only thing you need to sneak around disguised as Frida Kahlo in the Land of the Dead is a unibrow. And the dog. The dog being Dante. I'll tell you all why I found that so amusing. Especially when he transformed into a spirit guide at the end. Because you have a person from the land of the living being escorted through the land of the dead, as Dante was by Virgil, now Dante is doing for others. Your random bit of literature history that I can throw out for this one. But yeah, his guide through the land of the dead was Dante. It amused me. So that's just the way my brain works.
All right. You ready to do mine?
Let me think. If you haven't seen this, go see it. I have nothing negative really to say about this movie. It is wonderfully rendered. It is well acted. It is well written. It's not innovative or going to blow your socks off with oh my gosh, I can't believe they tried this narrative trick. But it's a lot of fun. And it's a kids movie. They're not going to deviate from the beaten path too much. They just stick to it, but they execute it so well. It really, and again, there is no inherent value to staying on the path any more than there is inherent value to leaving the path. It's all in how you execute, and this one is incredibly well executed. I think that's all I have to say. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's absolutely worth your time and money. It is the last positive review I'm likely to give.
Here we go. Oh, for fuck's sake.
No, I'm good with that. That was intentional on my... so I was just going to say this was probably the last...
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Money talk. Here comes the money. Money, money, dollar, dollar.
Are you quite done, or do you have anything else you'd like to add, sir?
This is the last positive review I'm probably going to give for 12 months.
Oh, you're gonna love it. Oh, I'm
really not.
May have jumped the. Yeah, I may have jumped the gun on Daphne and Vilma. That looks like it might be a feature that's going to be direct to home video. But boy,
it should be
if I'm
direct
wrong,
to hell. It should never
if
exist.
if that's in theaters, oh boy, howdy! I hope it's on a weekend we're not already covering something, because if not, that's going on the list, baby.
I am absolutely not going out of my way to find that. If I have to drive if it is more than a 15-minute drive, I am not seeing it.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to worry about it now.
Scooby-Doo.
I don't even have a date for it.
I hate Scooby-Doo
really?
as a property. Hate. Can't stand. When I was 5 and watching crappy reruns, I realized that this is the same episode. Like, they change bits of dialogue, they change setting, but it's the same thing every single time. Who in the hell is entertained by this? Shut up, David.
Okay.
My youngest brother is, and he and I have engaged in several debates over the last week about the merits of Scooby-Doo, of which there are none. And so again, no.
I was never a huge fan. I'll be honest.
Any of those. Like you have what? Scooby-Doo, Top Cat, Grape Ape. There's a Loch Ness Monster variant.
Why do you hate Hanna-Barbera so much?
Because they're not good. They're poorly written. They're poorly executed. They're poorly drawn. It is recycled crap in the same vein as Gilligan's Island. It's not good. It was the only thing on. That's why people watched it. It has no merit. Watch it without rose-colored glasses and see what crap it is. Please.
Can we get back to Coco?
The Love Boat sucked too. Yes.
Oh my God, you're terrible. Coco on a budget of $175 to $200 million. Apparently, most of which went to yeah, probably $200 million. I'm sure most of which went to making it look the way that it did. Currently sits at $157 million worldwide. Opening weekend, the domestic gross looked to be about $50 million, and I think the total gross was about $72 million. It was the number one movie of the weekend. It beat out Justice League, which hauled in another $41 million. Justice League went from 1 to 2, Wonder went from 2 to 3, and Thor went from 3 to 4. Daddy's Home 4 to 5. Murder on the Orient Express 5 to 6. The Star 6 to 7, which my kid saw today, or at least one kid saw it. The other kid fell asleep. A Bad Mom's Christmas fell from 7 to 8. Roman J. Israel Esquire, brought to you by the good people at Sony, jumped from 37 to 9. Meh. The 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, fell from 9 to 10. The Man Who Invented Christmas debuted at number 12, and Call Me By Your Name debuted at number 14. And Jigsaw, just to tell you, fell from 10 to 15. So there you go. As far as where we stand worldwide,
nothing's changed.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Thor Ragnarok is still at number 9, though it's closing in on number 8. It's got about 2 million more to go before it knocks Pirates out of the 8th spot. We'll see if it...
Ragnarok might not crack the top 5, though, which is kind of surprising.
Oh, no, it's got to... Well, to crack the top 5, it's got to pass 870 million. 870 million. Yeah, it's currently Wolf Warrior 2 in that spot. Rob's favorite movie of the year, Transformers: The Last Knight, fell to number 12.
I hate you for making me watch that.
Justice League is currently sitting at number 17 with 485 million. What kind of world do we live in with a man dressed up as a bat gets all of my press? More to the point, what kind of world do we live in where a movie like Justice League makes $485 million and that's not profitable? This has to make over $700 million just to earn even a little bit of profit. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? For this to have been a worthwhile endeavor, this thing really does need to crack $1 billion. But at a minimum, at least get over $700 million. It has to do better than Thor currently and Pirates. It has to do better than It. Currently, it has to do better than War of the Planet of the Apes, The Boss Baby, Dunkirk, Kong Skull Island, Rob's favorite movie, Transformers: The Last Night, and Logan. You understand what I'm trying to tell you?
You missed the best part of that line.
This town needs an enema.
There you go.
That's a great line.
I love that. I love that line, and it could especially be directed at Hollywood in the wake of all of these financial disasters. This town needs an enema.
Dude, I'm just looking at Blade Runner 2049 on a $150 million budget. You know, we are now several weeks away from when this debuted. It's only sitting at $255 million. This thing is a huge loss for Warner Brothers.
We are not a patient society anymore, Mark. And it kills me. It absolutely kills me. Now, there were problems with Blade Runner 2049 anyway, but as a non-joke, like this is something that I actually observed. I observed a bunch of people agreeing with the sentiment that The Godfather isn't watchable.
That's a shame.
They think it's too slow.
Sad.
They couldn't get like. Consider this. I don't know the location of all of these people, but for want of a better phrase, consider this American culture. You are now Peter Griffin. Think about that for a minute. You are that detestable, useless, fat sack of shit.
What is the line that he says
from
about...
a man who's... I'm amazed no one is pushed in front of a bus.
What is his line when he starts talking about The Godfather? He was like, it protests too much or something like that?
I don't know. He tries to... I don't care for The Godfather. And everyone kind of like, what? No, I can't get through
Right.
it.
Yeah,
I can never get past that scene where they're sitting around talking, they're sitting in the chair. Yeah, it's a great scene. Nah, can't do it. I just can't do it.
It protests too much. It's like, because it has a valid point to make. Yeah, you can't watch it. Like, if you tried to pitch The Deer Hunter now in this society, you would be laughed out of the fucking theater. The Deer Hunter would have to feature some sort of comic book character. And it would have to be, and the wedding scene would have to be cut down to 5 minutes at best.
Or Mark Wahlberg. Pretending to be the only guy in Pittsburgh who speaks with a Boston accent.
All right. Next week is nothing. As we've said before, this Friday, December 1st, there is literally nothing in the theaters. There's not a single,
would have been a nice
wide release.
Release Ferdinand, just as a thought.
That's what I was. We saw when we saw Coco, we saw the trailer for Ferdinand, and I just looked at my wife and I'm like, and I'm still annoyed they won't release Ferdinand this December 1st or the week after. I mean, what the hell?
Or in the month of October when there was nothing.
Well, I think they're my wife made a good point. They're really pushing John Cena, as the selling point of this movie. For all those kids that are into wrestling. But I mean, the other side of that is they're trying to take advantage of, the kids being out for like the Christmas holiday. Then don't put it in the beginning of December. Put it after Star Wars. Do it Christmas weekend. Do it Friday the 22nd. Because you know what the competition would have been then? Pitch Perfect 3, Father Figures, Downsizing, and all the money in the world. You could have had a perfectly good.
You would have had the kids market cornered.
Exactly.
Instead, no, Star Wars. And we're just going to pray that all the screaming children coming out sobbing after another main character dies Hopefully this time one that they actually can form an emotional bond to, rather than being told by their parents, no, trust me, Han Solo's awesome. And then after that,
shit here
so
on the
traumatized,
first.
they need to see a feel-good movie.
Yeah, just here are the top 5 movies coming out Friday, December 1st. All right, here we go. Another Wolf Cop by Parade Deck Films, Badsville from Epic Pictures, Brotherhood of Blades 2 from Wellgo USA, Daisy Winters from Hanover House, and The Disaster Artist from A24. I don't even know any of these fucking
I am
studios.
loosely familiar with The Disaster Artist because I hate James Franco. I hate him so much I'm aware of his projects. That's how much I hate him.
Here's something you might have heard of. It's from Fox Searchlight. At least them I've heard of. The Shape of Water. That comes out. Okay. All right. Are you ready?
Actually, again, I'm familiar with The Disaster Artist because it's James Franco playing Tommy Wiseau, and it's about his movie The Room, which is the worst movie ever made. And it stars James Franco, possibly the worst actor going in the world. So,
no, I think the worst movie ever made was The Lone Ranger.
Have you seen The Room?
I have not.
Mark? Much as I hated The Lone Ranger. I hate a lot of movies, mostly ones that you make me see. The Room is the worst movie ever made. If you don't believe me, find it and watch it.
Okay.
Its only value is as farce, and that's unintentional. It is the worst thing I've ever seen on... And again, I've seen all the Transformers movies. I've seen the Four Stick. Like, this is worse than, like, Manos Hands of Fate. It is so bad. I could go into hyperbole. I could go into UFC levels of hyperbole about how bad this is, and for once, I wouldn't be overselling. They wouldn't be overselling it. It is so bad. Do yourself a favor. Get drunk. Not blackout drunk, but you gotta be, like, I don't drink, but you want to be, there needs to be some chemical assistance. Watch this movie just so you can say you have seen the worst movie ever put to film. Again, like, Manos Hands of Fate or Plan 9 from Outer Space. Like, that's how bad this is. It is just incompetently made from start to finish. It is awful. It is just awful. It is so awful, it almost has to be witnessed. So
Are you ready now?
Again, just if you're going to bring up any other movie as the worst movie in existence until you have seen The Room, and bear in mind, this is Tommy Wiseau's The Room, not the deeply personal character drama starring Brie Larson Room. Important distinction. That "the" makes a huge difference about the quality of film you're about to watch. Yeah, I think I do believe, but again, just, I mean, I almost can't, I'm killing time because I'm not even going to get to yell at a whole lot of critics. Most of them didn't have their head up their ass for this movie.
But there are a few.
Oh, well then.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Wait, before you start,
Okay.
Mark, Mark, before you start, the Hype Brothers just broke up.
Aw.
It means nothing to
All
me,
right.
but I know it means something to you.
So, this has a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which means of the 100 plus or whatever critics that saw this, almost all of them unanimously thought it was fresh to one degree or another. But we have 6 people, 6 critics, half of which are top critics, who found fault with Coco, which was near universal praise. So let's just read them straight through. We're going to do all 6 rotten reviews here and call it a night, kiddos. Sherilyn Connolly of San Francisco Weekly says, being Pixar, the picture looks wonderful. Lighting cinematographer Danielle Feinberg has outshone herself, but in the end, the derivative Coco lacks the spark of life found in the Book of Life.
Why? What? Like, no. I mean, the whole point of this is actually rediscovering your purpose in life, and I wasn't even all that thrilled with the Book of Life, as I seem to recall. Like, I'm not quite sure how you arrived at that conclusion.
Sam Adams of Slate, top critic. The movie slips into a familiar rut, and the scenery fades into the background. This person could not have possibly watched this movie.
This moron. This moron right here. Let's start with, again, the visuals are the best part of this movie. Which is not to downplay anything else that goes into it, but like pretending that they fade is inaccurate to actually what happens on screen. Second, I can't believe there are this many morons out there. Did you even go to college? And if so, what liberal jackass professor somehow drilled into you, or you misconstrued what they were saying, that following tread paths or going along accepted norms is somehow an indictment, an instantaneous indictment. It is of no more value to break from tradition than it is to stick to tradition. One has no inherent value over the other. And more importantly, if you want to criticize an experimental art house piece for maybe falling too far into tropes, that's one thing. It's a kid's movie, you flaming jackass. Of course it's going to play into tropes. Well, no, he was going to arrive home and he's too late. His, beloved great-great-grandmother Coco has actually passed on. This would just be one great, wouldn't it? Yeah, great-grandmother. His great-grandmother has actually passed on. He's too late. His father's been forgotten in the land of the dead, and thus a lesson was learned about the importance of valuing family while they're around. Like, really? Like, you moron.
All righty, moving right along. Tom Grierson of Screen International. With a fetching soundtrack and an array of visual delights in a search of comparably imaginative narrative, Coco is sweet and sentimental without being particularly engaging.
I mean, I was engaged. Mark, you were engaged. Your daughter seemed pretty engaged. Everyone I was in the theater with, which included a couple of elderly people actually using closed captioning devices, were all quite engaged.
You know who wasn't engaged, in all fairness? To this critic, I'll give him to him. I know one person who was not engaged by this movie. My 3.5-year-old son. My 3.5-year-old son was really into seeing this movie, and then I think between the 20-minute, which I don't want to talk about it, but if we had more time, if I didn't have to, almost immediately run off the show to deal with a work fiasco, I might have brought this up. But, there are people who are pissed off because the 20-minute short at the beginning of Coco, for Olaf's
who cares? Just who cares?
Christmas adventure.
It's not.
Hang on, I'm getting somewhere with this. There's a point here, though, if you please.
Sorry.
And that point is people are pissed off that it was 20 minutes long, and that by the end of it, the kids were like, "We're done here." I guess that was the movie because we can't, we don't have the attention span for much else, and so parents are aggravated with Disney for putting a 20-minute feature at the beginning of Coco. So I bring that up though because my son, admittedly, was, I think, one of those people. I mean, he did okay for a little while, but whatever. I mean, he says he likes the movie, but I watched him. There was a point where he was sitting on the floor or sitting underneath our seats in the back row because he was maybe not as engaged as he should have been. Of course, he has that right. He's 3. What's this fuck's excuse?
He has the brain of a 3-year-old.
Well said.
Incidentally, I didn't touch on this earlier. I said before, like, I don't get the appeal of Frozen. Apart from, like, it's got.
You're not
you
a
mentioned
girl.
it. It's a sure. Yeah, I think you're the one who also mentioned, like, it's a terrible movie, but it has great songs.
And like, you can blow off the "you're not a girl" thing, but that's it. You know,
That's
girls
part of it too,
identify
I'm sure.
with both of those characters. You know?
And I have no issue with that, but, like, this was, like, that opening, it was too long. There's a reason most Pixar shorts that are in front of their movies are, like, 5 to 6 minutes. 20 minutes is too long, and it was also just not all that good.
I mean, I was amused. My daughter liked it. My wife liked it. We all thought it was a sweet little story. I didn't mind the length of it, but then again, I can sit through The Godfather. So,
Hey, you and I can both do. I can sit through The Godfather too. I sat through the first 2 back to back. I demand some credit for that, and I enjoyed it because I can actually pay attention to something that isn't brightly colored and exploding every 3 seconds. Bunch of morons.
Rayford Guzman of Newsday, this guy. This is the Get 'em Winfree review of the night, everyone. All right, you ready? Buckle in. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Rayford Guzman of Newsday, my old hometown paper. Coco makes sure to cross every item off its Mexican checklist. Tamales, sombreros, a shot of what looks like tequila. But that's not the same as immersing us in a culture. And I'm going to go get candy now.
Really? Like, no. Hold on. This guy.
There we go.
How dare they put piñatas in a movie about Mexico? That's derivative. Like, they didn't actually invent piñatas. Like, oh, they drink tequila. Well, I'm pretty sure tequila is still consumed. And I'm pretty sure, like, I'm not going to accuse an entire, culture and country of being drunkards. I'm not that guy. But I'm pretty sure there are still people in Mexico who drink tequila. It was actually developed in that country. Certainly that part of the world. It might have been developed further south. I'd have to double check my, alcoholic history, but I'm not up to date on it, so I apologize for that. Like, no, this is not derivative. Like, the closest thing you come to, like, quasi-derivative of Mexican culture is the fact that the lively great-grandmother beats a mariachi, like, drives off a mariachi by smacking him with her shoe. Like, that's the closest you get, because... And that's not even actually all that derivative, because if you've ever been around... I got a good friend who is of Hispanic heritage, and he attests to the validity of the lethality of his mother with a sandal. Like, this is a thing. So again, like, the closest thing you get to derivative isn't actually all that derivative and more just meant to be kind of an in-joke. Like, and more importantly, what would this guy have felt was actually appropriate to this? And that's what really kind of kills me about this style. Like, well, it sure checks off all the boxes to make sure everyone knows it's taking place in Mexico, but it's really not immersive. Like, what more do you want? Like, where do we... And this is the type of thing where if it actually went the steps further, this jackass implies it would be derivative and insulting. And then he'd call it derivative and insulting. You miserable malcontent.
Well, this is like the Moana thing. People complain. There were people who complained like, "Oh, they were exploiting Polynesian culture." Well, I don't know what. I'm going to go with liberals. I don't know what liberals want from movie makers anymore, because if you do something that isn't white culture, if you do white culture, you're in trouble for not being inclusive. You're whitewashing. You're You're not being inclusive to other cultures. You're not giving people an opportunity to experience other cultures. You're a piece of shit. Okay, so let's do a Polynesian movie. Let's do a black movie in New Orleans. Let's do a Mexican movie. Okay, all of those are stereotypes and derivative and exploitive. Now I don't know what it is you want, and I don't know why anyone tries to make you happy. I honestly don't know what to say. It's like I don't see where anyone could find insult in this movie towards Mexicans.
I do have to ask, is there any outrage from the Mexican community about this? Like, is there?
Probably not, considering I think this broke records in Mexico. And I think that should be if anybody, if any reviewer out there takes issue with the representation of Mexicans, maybe hold your tongue until you've consulted with actual Mexicans to see what they think, and just sort of take it as read. Just if the Mexicans were okay with it, maybe you should be too. So, your white man's burden and all of that.
This full outrage, this deeply repressed liberal guilt that they feel compelled to express. No, Ghostbusters is a great, icon of feminism, and I have to say this because my guilt compels me to as a white male. Shut up.
Adam Graham of Detroit News, top critic. In the end, it's all too much. Yet at the same time, not enough. Despite its efforts, Coco can't rise above mid-tier Pixar. Sir, I have watched mid-tier Pixar. This is not mid-tier Pixar.
How spoiled is this ass? All right, let me just say this. I said when you were off, look, if we accept that, first of all, the worst Pixar movie by a country mile is Cars 2. And it's not even close. It's just awful. If we exclude that as what it is, it's a horribly insulting cash grab that was with a mandate to make it handed down from on high because, wait, we have something that appeals to boys. If we exclude Cars 2, the worst Pixar movie is probably one of the following three, and there's some debate that can be had about the order here. Brave, The Good Dinosaur, or Cars 3?
Okay, The Good Dinosaur there's no argument. It's The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah, again, there's an argument to be had the other way, but I'm not going to argue it with you. I would take every one of those movies over 90% of the films I have to review next year. This guy's complaining.
The year of dumpster fire is.
It really is. This guy's complaining about what? It's not surpassing Toy Story 3 as cinematic perfection? How spoiled are you? Middling Pixar is still better than 80% of major studio releases. And yet you're complaining about this. This is a bad thing. This movie is somehow lesser because it comes from an excellent studio with a history of nothing but excellence, and it doesn't immediately ascend to new heights, therefore I must ding it. Middling Pixar is not an insult. I wish I had seen more films this year that were the quality of the average Pixar film.
Yeah, I know, I liked Brave. I know a lot of people aren't, wazooey about it. But I would tell you that Brave was better than a lot of what we saw this year.
It was. Easily. Ratatouille was eminently forgettable and still very good.
All right.
Oh, it's middling Pixar, and this is somehow a negative? You do not apply the... Okay, well, because I don't feel this rises above middling Pixar, A, it does, and B, even if it didn't, that somehow is an indictment. How about you compare it with the average movie? Let's just start there, because that's where we should be comparing these things.
How about just the average animated feature that isn't Pixar? Fuck, I would put this movie above the what do you call it, the Minions movie, which made over $1 billion.
I would probably agree with that. And I mean, just for hang on, because now I want to.
I'm still like, mad about Inside Out. I just want you to know that.
You are deeply there's no reason for you to be that mad about it. Okay, I would watch this over.
I'm still so upset.
Wham, wham, wham. A movie that was well made, designed to appeal to a broader base around the world, did better than an extremely well-written movie that struggles when it had to be subtitled or dubbed. The shock I feel. The horror. Mark, you getting the vapors over this? Do you feel the need to clutch your pearls and throw yourself on the divan?
I've already done that. At this point, it would just be overkill.
Okay. I would take Coco over Justice League, over Murder on the Orient Express, over Thor Ragnarok. So the last three major releases, in a heartbeat, I would prefer this. I'd certainly take it over Jigsaw. I'd take it over everything from the month of October. And I actually liked Blade Runner 2049. But everything from the month of October. How about September? Was there anything good there?
No.
No.
Yeah,
so
the Inhumans in IMAX.
No, we had it. We had it in the month of September. So over the past 3 months, there's one movie that I would personally prefer to watch over watching Coco a second time. How about July?
This guy.
No, again, this is legitimately one of the best movies I've seen all year. But this guy, because it doesn't ascend to, again, cinematic perfection like you found in a few other Pixar movies. No, it's clearly not good. Compare it with the last 3 movies you reviewed, you miserable sack of crap, and let's see how that comes out. No, it's so wrong.
All right, lastly, right here in my own neck of the woods, Steve Purcell of the Tampa Bay Times. Disney-Pixar, I feel like this guy always shits on movies we like, by the way.
Do you know where he lives?
Disney-Pixar's Coco was more enjoyable 3 years ago when it was titled The Book of Life and came from 20th Century Fox. You motherfucker.
See, again, this is somewhat untrue. The basic story from The Book of Life was actually quite different, if memory serves.
So, this guy gave... Okay, so I got to read this because if I don't cause you to have a stroke at least once per show, then I'm not doing my job. Are you ready?
I have a request for you after you get done with all of this.
So this asshole from the Tampa Bay Times gave Coco a C. He gave Justice League a B-.
This guy knows nothing.
He gave American Made a B-. He gave Victoria and Abdul a B. He gave Blade Runner 2049 an A. All right, so there you go. The Lego Ninjago movie a C+. Kingsman: The Golden Circle a C-. It a B. Let's see here. The Hitman's Bodyguard C+. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets a D. Atomic Blonde a C. He gave The Dark Tower a C. Dunkirk an A. War for the Planet of the Apes an A-. Spider-Man Homecoming a B+. Despicable Me. He gave Despicable Me 3 a B- and Coco a C.
Mark, I have a request of you. This will take a bit of your time and energy.
Give me half a second here. Do you know what he gave Transformers The Last Night comparable to Coco?
I'm guessing a similar grade.
He gave it a C. The exact same one he gave Coco.
All right. I want you to find this guy, Mark. He lives in your neck of the woods. I have a very specific request, actually. The next time you go fishing, I want you to keep some of the chum. I want you to find this gentleman's car. And you have to do this in the following order. This is actually important to getting this to stick and work. Some of it you just slop in the back. You just slop it in the back seat. The rest of it, you actually have to take off the hubcaps to his car and you stick it in there and then put them back on. Because he's going to clean the back of his car after you have slopped it. But the stench will then follow him for weeks as he struggles to figure out exactly where it's coming from.
I will do my best. All right, that's the end.
I'm not even really joking about that. I genuinely want you to desecrate his mode of transportation or his house with dead fish.
Okay. I will put that on my bucket list. So
Find
we're done
where he
here.
lives
I apologize.
and just have your kids throw crap at his car, harmless crap at him as he's walking to and from work. It's
maybe I'll plant drugs on him and then he'll get arrested and then I can put him on suicide watch when he comes into booking.
That's what I would do.
All right. We're done here. Again,
I want you to find
for...
that guy, and I wish you to exact
oh my
vengeance
God.
on him for his terrible, terrible life.
I apologize, everybody, for the fourth time. It couldn't be avoided. Unfortunately, I had to take that call, and that call went longer than I had anticipated it was going to, but it needed to be done. But thankfully, it was for this movie, where I honestly was like, how many times was I going to say, this movie's great, I have no complaints. Anyway, that being said, next week, no Damn You Hollywood, but we do have a TV party for The Punisher. We're finally getting around to it. Speaking of finally getting around to it, The Crown comes out, the new season of The Crown comes out December 1st. I haven't even seen season 1 yet, so me and Andrew Graham are going to talk about it on December 12th. And then finally, Rob's favorite movie, Star Wars The Last Jedi. We'll talk about it on Tuesday the 19th. And then Rob's other favorite movie, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Getting rave reviews, ladies and gentlemen, rave reviews.
I hate
Fantastic.
You so
much. The kids just love it. And then we start the new year here with, there'll be no Damn You Hollywoods in the month of January.
Seriously, though, if you think Kevin Hart's funny, you might want to have a CAT scan.
So starting next year, this year was rough on me. I don't need to go into a whole soliloquy about it. I don't feel like talking about it. But we know I had cancer. People know I had to cancel some shows, or I had to sit out some shows because I wasn't up to, or I was in the hospital, or I wasn't up to doing them. And I felt, bad about that. But the one thing that it kind of brought to mind was that recording 4 days a week can be a bit tiresome. So I endeavor to record a little less next year. Not a whole lot less, but a little less. 4 days a week is ridiculous for a guy that's doing this as a hobby. So we're moving a lot of Thursday content to Tuesdays. You're still going to get a whole year's worth of Damn You Hollywood, but as we do every year, we take January off because it's fuck you, it's January. That's why.
If there was something worth watching, we'd talk about it.
No, January is always a dumpster fire. That's why it's called fuck you, it's January. So instead, we'll do a TV party for Fuller House Season 3, Part 2 on January 2nd. We're gonna move the on trial for most of the year onto Tuesdays where we don't have something else going on. There'll be the occasional Thursday on trial, but for the most part, we're trying to move them to Tuesdays. So we're gonna do an on trial for the movie 300 by Zack Snyder on January 9th. On January 16th, provided all goes according to plan, we'll do a TV party for the Hulu series The Runaways, which we covered the comic book just this past Monday on source material. And on the 23rd, we're going to do Pinky and the Brain Volume 1. I'll have Alexis Hana on to talk about the first season of Pinky and the Brain, which started out as a short on the Animaniacs show, as you may recall. On the 30th of January, Sean's going to do an on trial. Of course, he hasn't picked his yet, but he always picks some fun ones. February, we got Black Sail Season 2, another on trial from Sean, and then we're back. Damn You, Hollywood is back on the 20th. We'll be looking at Black Panther. And that's all I got for now. You're wondering when you're going to get your steady dose of Damn You, Hollywood. March 6th. From March 6th, pretty much on, for the most part, is going to be... when we go almost every week until the end of the summer with Damn You Hollywood. March has got Death Wish, A Wrinkle in Time, Tomb Raider, and Pacific Rim. All movies Rob can't wait to review.
There's one in that group that I'm actually kind of interested in.
Is it Death Wish?
Do you think it's Death Wish?
Is it A Wrinkle in Time?
Do you think it's A Wrinkle in Time?
It's a Tomb Raider.
Do you think it's Tomb Raider?
Pacific Rim Uprising, isn't it?
Do you think it's Pacific Rim?
Is it Ready Player One? Is it The New Mutants? Is it Rampage?
Actually, am kind of looking forward to Ready Player One. I have no interest in The New Mutants. Absolutely none.
Is it Avengers Infinity War? Is it Solo, a Star Wars story?
Mark, seriously, nothing from 2018. I know everybody gets their... I know everybody has this bizarre attachment with A Wrinkle in Time because they were in middle school. They read it and it was their first exploration of metaphysics and fiction. I didn't care that much for it. I actually preferred the sequel.
Alrighty. With that being said, go ahead and do your plugs and let's get out of here.
All right. I hate next year so much.
Jesus Christ, just go already.
No, I'm just looking through it again, and I'm through August, I'm nope. So much nope. God, I hate my life. All right. You can normally find me talking about MMA-related things on the 411 Ground and Pound radio show Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This last week, we reviewed Fight Night 122, which, the main event should not have been medically cleared, but when the UFC self-regulates, they don't need no stinking medical clearances for guys who were concussed and choked out 20 days previous. Dana White has just said a bunch of stupid stuff today. I mean, such stupid stuff. What are you going to do if GSP decides he isn't going to defend the middleweight bout? Well, I'll be pissed. That doesn't even answer the question. So Tony Ferguson thinks that Conor McGregor should defend the belt or vacate it. Tony shouldn't talk about anything. We don't book around Tony Ferguson. No. Your interim champion shouldn't be clued in as to when he might get a crack at the actual belt. Ugh. I hate Dana White. Then anyway, we reviewed Fight Night 122. We previewed the Tough Finale show, such as it is, because they've announced 5 fights for that card. That's it. That's all they've announced. And they have a new guy debuting on commentary with Daniel Cormier, and I'm gonna hate that night so much. I hate tough finales in general. They're just badly paced and full of people who are probably not even legitimately a UFC caliber fighter, although what that means nowadays is somewhat questionable. But now you're adding a commentary team that's very likely to crash and burn just to make my life worse. We also previewed UFC 218, which is a legitimately great main card. The main event is a rematch between Jose Aldo and Max Holloway for Holloway's featherweight title. You've also got our offering to the violence gods as Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez try to shorten each other's lives by years. Seriously, those two. I am so looking forward to that fight. Now watch it fall through in the next 6 days because I can't have nice things. This coming Sunday, and I will have coverage of those events in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania on Sunday. We'll review both of those and preview Fight Night 123. Hang on, I got to double check that. 218. Yeah, 123. Swanson versus Ortega. Okay, yeah, they seriously? All right. I'm glad that they just changed the order of some of the bouts over the last couple of days, so for that event. But yeah, you got Swanson and Ortega, which is a pretty good fight. Marlon Moraes is fighting Aljamain Sterling. That should be pretty good. That's kind of it. Where are they for that? Ah, Fresno. Okay, that explains some of the people on this card. So we'll review all of the action from Friday and Saturday, and we'll preview that event. Should be a good time. The shows are a lot of fun. And next Tuesday, Mark and I will be discussing The Punisher. I will talk about my love of acting and violence and the intersection of the two that is that show. I will also complain about a couple of characters because there's a few that are questionably written. Ugh. They're actually filling out the tough... Again, they've announced like 5 fights. They're filling it out with people from the season. I hate my life. So, I'll see you next week if I haven't succumbed to depression and just ended everything. Because I just can't take it anymore.
Don't say that. Don't say that. That's terrible. All right. For the nice suicidal Robert Winfree, and for
what I get for looking at the schedule for 2018. It robs me of hope.
Okay. I am your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. We'll be back soon. Be well, be safe.
See you guys then.
And behave.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.